characteristic into turn one, and they've already gone off. Oh!
Motorsport is fun and exciting with many different branches. But it can be dangerous, and when unavoidable accidents do occur, it needs the skilled assistance of dedicated people like doctors, paramedics and nurses. This presentation is intended for medical personnel who'd like to help at motorsport events.
We've got Ian and Tony have both been in.
The first part provides a broad overview, and then the second looks at some aspects of medicine in motorsport in more detail. First, a look at the structure of motorsport. It's governed internationally by the Fédération Internationale Automobile, or FIA, which delegates authority to national governing bodies, known as ASNs, in each country. FIA regulations recommend a minimum number of medical staff, types of equipment, ambulances and so on for motorsport events, and ASNs may also have their own additional requirements. The medical information in this presentation follows the recommendations of the FIA. The procedures and techniques described should only be carried out by trained medical personnel in accordance with high levels of professional custom and practice. Qualifications? Well, medical officers in motorsport are qualified doctors. Paramedics, nurses and other professional support staff within the medical team may assume some of the functions of doctors in certain circumstances. All doctors and members of the medical team must be registered to practice with their own regulatory body. The doctors and medical team's main function will be to provide immediate rather than definitive care for injured competitors, and the skills that may be called on include basic life support and resuscitation, trauma management, and the ability to work with people who do not have a medical background, including rescue crews and marshals, when removing a driver from a crashed car, for instance. You don't need to be a specialist. Doctors from all backgrounds are welcome, but you should never work outside your capabilities. Many countries offer training for personnel helping in the sport. For doctors, acquiring skills in advanced trauma life support, airway management and resuscitation is particularly relevant. What about legal cover? Well, all medical personnel need to be covered by medical insurance, and it's advisable to consult your medical defence organisation or medical practice insurance provider before becoming a motorsport medical officer to ensure that you are properly covered. Your national club may also be able to offer advice. And as regulations and medical custom and professional practice vary around the world, you should make sure you comply with any national laws and regulations relating to motorsport and medical practice in your country. What fees and expenses, if any, medical personnel get while helping at motorsport events may also vary. Any colleague already involved in the sport should be able to advise you. If not, consult your national governing body or the event organizer. You'll need some personal equipment, of course, but we'll look at that in the second part. In summary, motorsport is a disciplined and well-organized sport. It has many different branches, so there's something to interest everyone. And it offers medical personnel a chance to play a very significant part right at the heart of the action. If you'd like to know more, please now watch the second part of this presentation. This section considers the equipment you'll need, the organisation of an event and how you'll slot into the team. Then it looks at some typical incidents encountered in the sport, and finally at some of the life support techniques. First, personal equipment. You should have overalls made from a fire retardant or fire resistant material such as Proban or Nomex. They're available off the peg or made to measure from specialist motorsport equipment suppliers. They should be in the colour specified by the sports governing body in your country. They should be clearly marked, for example, doctor, paramedic or medical team, again as required by the governing body and usually on the front and back panels. You may also choose to wear flame retardant underclothes to give additional protection from fire. Waterproof and extra warm clothing is often essential, even in mild climates, as the event will not usually stop just because the weather turns nasty. Wind chill and exposure to cold over long periods during an event are not only uncomfortable, but potentially dangerous. Conversely, you may spend hours in hot and sunny conditions, so sensible precautions should be taken to guard against sunburn and dehydration. Other items of protective clothing should include a hat and warm gloves. And suitable footwear is strongly advised. It's recommended that you should wear ear protection even on events where noise levels are low. Prolonged exposure to high noise can result in hearing loss, so use ear defenders or ear plugs where the noise of competition engines could damage unprotected ears. Safety glasses are a must, both for yourself and a casualty when cutting equipment is being used to free a competitor who's trapped. Finally, on personal equipment, make sure you have adequate food and drink with you, although obviously not alcohol. Turning to more specialised equipment, a medical officer should carry kit appropriate to his skills and duties. This may range from a small belt bag to more advanced equipment. Specialised items, including defibrillators and monitors, may be available in medical cars, intervention units and ambulances. You should find out what equipment is carried and know how to use it safely, because there can be hazards with certain items. A defibrillator, for example, can cause injury to the operator, any assistants and a casualty if used incorrectly. Equipment should be operated according to manufacturer's recommendations, regularly serviced and checked before each event to ensure that it's working properly. And battery-powered equipment should be fully charged with spare charged batteries carried wherever possible. Always check that drugs, intravenous fluids and disposable single-use items are within their manufacturer's use-by date. These checks should include the contents of oxygen cylinders and that flow meters are working correctly. Also check equipment bags and replace any missing items. To sum up on equipment, know what's available. Check that it's working properly and know how to use it safely. Now let's look at the actual running of an event. A clerk of the course will usually be in charge of a rally and a race director in control of a race, although exact titles may vary. Several officials will report to whoever's in overall charge, and these will usually include a chief medical officer, the CMO. The chief medical officer will be in charge of medical services for both competitors and spectators. At some major events, separate medical services may be provided for the general public, but the CMO will usually remain in overall charge. The CMO decides where medical services, including paramedical, nursing and support staff, are to be placed. Where appropriate, he'll also oversee the staffing of any medical centre, and he may delegate senior staff to take charge of specific tasks. The Chief Medical Officer will also allocate doctors, usually with specific resuscitation skills, to medical cars, which may form part of the fast response to an incident and are often known as FIVs, or First Intervention Vehicles. These cars carry experienced medical personnel and advanced resuscitation equipment, and will usually have skilled drivers familiar with driving on a track during an event. When travelling to an incident, the FIV crew members are advised to wear a helmet and the appropriate harness. And crew members should be aware of the possible dangers when getting out of a car at an incident. Doctors may also be allocated to rescue vehicles, ambulances, or on foot to specific areas such as the pits, garages and service areas. You could find yourself allocated to one or a number of duties, but if you're new to the sport, you'll usually be with an experienced motorsport doctor who'll help you learn the procedures involved. As you gain experience, you'll build up an understanding of extrication techniques used in the sport, as well as an appreciation of the dangers of working both around and within a crashed car. Medical officers usually work with marshals, who are responsible for a designated section of a rally stage or racetrack. There will usually be a senior marshal responsible for leading the team if an incident occurs. By training with marshals, you'll be able to share an understanding of the medical priorities, the technical difficulties and the practical issues involved in motorsport rescue. Incidentally, many of the marshals you'll be working with may have seen a companion presentation, First Aid in Motorsport, so it's worth familiarising yourself with what's covered in that. The first response to an incident will be made by rally stage or trackside marshals, who will assess the situation and manage the incident accordingly. The marshals attending will call on the doctor if a driver is or appears to be injured. This may be directly, for example, to a trackside doctor or to race or rally control for medical assistance.
Control, car 16 has gone off.
The immediacy of an incident is one of the most striking features of motorsport medicine. You'll be in the unique position of being able to intervene very early on in the trauma process and so contribute to a favourable result. But this doesn't mean an uncontrolled rush to a casualty. An incident should be dealt with in a structured and disciplined way. Always follow the advice of the senior marshal. As a doctor, you should not become a casualty yourself. In fact, safety should be a primary concern at all times. Keep in mind that a circuit or rally stage may still be live with cars travelling at high speeds. If an accident happens on a rally stage, the stage will be stopped or cars slowed by flags displayed at various points. A race will be brought under a degree of control using a series of flags, lights or a safety car. Waved yellow flags warn drivers that there's an incident in that sector of the circuit, but they may still be travelling at speed. A red flag indicates that a race is stopped, but you should still take care when going to a casualty on the track and only do so under the instruction of the senior marshal. Rescue and medical vehicles will park at an incident in such a way as to help protect rescue personnel. However, this is not a guarantee of safety, and you should remain alert to what's happening around you. In rain, for instance, a driver may have difficulty seeing the front of his car, let alone warning flags or rescue personnel on the track. In certain events, control of a race is brought about by the use of a safety car, which competitors follow until an incident is dealt with. But cars may still be travelling at high speed in the area where you may be working, so remain vigilant and, for instance, avoid turning your back on oncoming vehicles, watch for flying debris which may cause particular problems, and remember that at kart meetings in particular, the sheer number of competitors and races means constant vigilance is necessary. A simultaneous response to an incident may have been made by fire marshals if there's a fire or the danger of fire. Don't approach a vehicle that's on fire. Wait for the fire to be put out and for the senior marshal to signal for your assistance. It's usual for marshals to be in contact with race or rally control by phone or radio, and if an incident has already been reported as potentially serious, a decision to dispatch a medical car may have already been made, so experienced help will be on its way. If casualties are conscious, get down to their level to make eye contact and to avoid them moving their heads to look at you when you talk to them.
Okay, and also, can you inform the Chief
If you feel you need further qualified assistance or a more experienced colleague, ask the incident marshal to pass your request to race or rally control. The CMO should be informed about the extent of any injury as soon as possible. He will usually then inform the race director or clerk of the course. You may have to begin resuscitation and other emergency medical procedures while a driver is still in or near the car. In these circumstances, you're in a hostile environment. The marshals will ensure that fire is extinguished, batteries isolated, and fuel leaks or spills dealt with. You should watch out for sharp edges from metal or carbon fibre bodywork and broken glass or jagged plastic and composites. And in addition, guard against burns from exhaust systems, for instance, and keep in mind that skin and respiratory tract irritants may be present, such as dry extinguisher powder, fiberglass and spilled fuels. Once a driver's condition has been assessed, decide how you want the casualty removed from the vehicle, based on the need for urgent airway management, the likelihood of spinal or pelvic injury, any immediate dangers such as the risk of explosion or fire, and any other relevant factors. If there's an immediate threat to the casualty's life, you may decide on a rapid but controlled extrication. Conversely, where spinal, pelvic or long bone injuries are a concern, a slower extrication using spinal boards and extrication devices may be called for. Based on the medical priorities, the doctor will guide the rescue team as the extrication strategy is planned. Access to the casualty may be extremely limited or difficult. There may, for instance, be a need to cut away part of the car while you continue medical management of the injured driver, so you may find yourself inside a vehicle that's being taken apart. The process may be noisy, with dangers from broken glass and sharp metalwork. You'll need to protect yourself and the driver by using, for example, protective screens, ear defenders, and eye protection. You should keep a conscious driver informed of the extrication plan and forewarn him of any cutting or sudden noises.
Right, how are you feeling?
Listen carefully to a casualty and keep the rescue crew informed to ensure that the driver suffers minimum distress and no further pain or injury. You may need to consider advanced medical interventions or administer medication, but only if this is within your area of expertise. Specific types of intervention or medication will be determined by the driver's condition. You may also need to consider analgesia for the casualty in pain. This includes the cautious use of intravenous analgesia, which should be titrated to effect. The use of nitrous oxide oxygen mixtures, Entonox, is inadvisable if there's any suspicion of head or chest injury and should not be used where a pneumothorax is suspected or confirmed. Following extrication, vital medical treatment of the casualty may need to be continued by the side of the stage or track. But generally, the casualty should be transferred to the Circuit Medical Centre or nearest appropriate medical facility without delay. A casualty may have to be carried over difficult terrain, particularly on a rally or an off-road event where even standing up at the scene may be difficult. Transport may then take the form of an ambulance, which should conform to the minimum national standards of services, equipment and personnel. An ambulance should not be seen as just a mode of casualty transport. Correctly equipped and staffed, one can provide intensive care facilities while the casualty is moved from a track to a medical centre or from an incident to a definitive care facility. Sometimes a helicopter may be summoned, usually by radio, so that it arrives shortly before an extrication is completed. Helicopters create their own hazards, and skilled personnel are essential for loading and unloading casualties and monitoring their condition in flight. Now let's take a brief look at a few basic and advanced life support techniques. Removing the driver's helmet. Removal of the head and neck support, the hands device, and applying a hard collar. This, of course, is not intended to be a substitute for more formal training. First, removing a driver's helmet. This is a controlled technique requiring at least 2 rescuers. Where possible, approach from the front and speak to the driver. The driver should be reassured and asked not to move his head, as this risks further spinal damage. The rescuers work together so that the driver's head and neck are always supported. The visor should be raised if not already done, and the chin strap released or cut if necessary. The driver may be wearing a head and neck support or hands device. Before the helmet can be removed, it's necessary to unfasten or cut the helmet tethers. By using outward tension on the helmet straps or gripping the rim of the helmet, the opening is increased in size. With careful and gentle forward and backward rotation, the helmet is manoeuvred over the nose and occiput. The driver's head and neck continue to be supported. Before a hard collar can be applied, the hands device, if present, is removed. The driver's harness is released and taken off his shoulders. In this example, the hands is rotated through 90 degrees and slid off the driver's shoulder. The rescuers can now apply a hard collar. Soft collars should not be used as they fail to give adequate support and protection to the cervical spine. There are a number of different types of hard collar available. You need to familiarize yourself with the type of collar that you'll be using, including the manufacturer's sizing and fitting instructions. The collar should be applied with care, and even when in place, the head and neck should continue to be supported. The medical and rescue teams can now prepare to extricate the driver from the car. This requires further specialized equipment, skills and training. It's important to note that only the basics are shown in these demonstrations. Practical skills such as these are best learned by training with experienced doctors and marshals who can show you the techniques in more detail. You may choose to spend your time at a variety of events or possibly develop a special interest in 1 or 2 areas of the sport. But you'll soon discover that there are some general principles, such as the attention to detail, the need to work as a team, and the emphasis on personal safety, that apply across the whole of motorsport medicine, including, of course, motorcycling. And there are also special areas of concern. These range from the accessibility issues of a rally stage to the single-handed medical officer at a small event. Doctors who provide cover at junior kart meetings should be skilled in pediatric trauma management. Certain historic car series often have older drivers competing, and whilst they should have been passed medically fit to drive, they can nonetheless be affected by previously stable or even new acute medical conditions. It's not unknown for asymptomatic ischemic heart disease to become overt as a myocardial infarction during a race, causing a driver to crash. Loss of control of a vehicle may be due to the driver's medical emergency rather than the result of mechanical failure or collision. In any age group, unusual or odd circumstances ascribed to the incident should also raise the possibility of acute medical illness in the driver as a cause of the incident. Like all officials, medical personnel at an event may be called upon as witnesses of fact if an incident occurs. This is particularly important where serious injury or a fatality happens and where the medical officer has been involved treating the casualty. So, attending doctors should make accurate notes on any driver who receives medical attention. The note should preferably be on official forms provided by the organisers or governing body. Accurate notes are important where a casualty is transferred to a definitive care facility, while in some countries they may be required by law for health and safety purposes. As in any high-profile spectator sport, the professional conduct of officials is important. For instance, you should not discuss confidential matters or events with members of the press or public. Requests for information should be referred to the Chief Medical Officer or other appropriate senior official. Whether on media, medical or other matters, the advice is the same. If in doubt, ask. So, to sum up, when helping at motorsport events, be clear on the legal and insurance situation. Have the right personal clothing and medical equipment. Know what other medical equipment is supplied and how to use it. Work as a team with other medical personnel and marshals. Take any training opportunities, especially on areas specific to the sport. And finally, always keep your personal safety in mind. The presence of a skilled medical officer with an informed understanding of the motorsport environment is crucial to a good outcome for an injured competitor. The contribution of medical expertise and time to motorsport safety is both vital and highly valued by competitors at all levels of the sport. If you'd like to get more involved, and you'll be warmly welcomed if you do, then either consult a colleague who knows about motorsport or contact your country's national organising body. The Motorsport Safety Fund and the FIA hope you'll enjoy some exciting but safe motorsport.